Hello everyone. Welcome to Confessions Jury, where Reddit's AITAH stories go on trial. Make sure to listen carefully and express your verdict in the comments section below. Moving on to the first case. Case 1. Am I the bad person for leaving my husband at the hospital after he refused to be in the delivery room with me? This happened 2 months ago, but it's still causing major friction in my family, so I need some outside opinions. I, 29F, and my husband Jake, 32M, have been together for 6 years, married for 3. We were both ecstatic when we found out we were expecting our first child. Pregnancy was tough for me, though. I had severe morning sickness, gestational diabetes, and was generally miserable. But Jake was supportive and sweet the whole way through, which made it bearable. As we got closer to my due date, we discussed birth plans. I was adamant that I wanted Jake in the delivery room. I needed his support, and he'd always agreed. However, a few weeks before my due date, Jake started acting strange. He was distant, distracted, and wouldn't engage in any baby-related discussions. I thought he was just anxious about becoming a dad, so I didn't press him too much. The day I went into labor, Jake drove me to the hospital but seemed off. He was quiet and kept checking his phone. When we got there, he pulled the nurse aside and spoke to her privately. She came back and told me Jake wouldn't be in the delivery room because he was uncomfortable with blood and medical procedures. I was stunned. He'd never mentioned this before. I begged him to stay, told him I needed him, but he just kept saying, "I can't do this." I was heartbroken and furious, but I didn't have much time to dwell on it as my contractions were getting stronger. Jake said he'd be in the waiting room and kissed me on the forehead before leaving. I was left alone, crying and feeling utterly abandoned. Labor was long, painful, and traumatic. I was alone the entire time except for the medical staff. When our son was finally born, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. The nurse handed me my son, and all I felt was a deep sadness that Jake wasn't there to share this moment. After I was taken to a recovery room, I asked the nurse to get Jake. She came back and said he'd left the hospital hours ago. I couldn't believe it. I called him repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Finally, I sent him a text saying I was done and he could find his own way home. I didn't see him until the next day. He showed up at the hospital with flowers and an apology, saying he'd panicked and needed some air. He claimed he'd gone home to shower and change and fell asleep, which I didn't buy for a second. I told him I didn't believe him. I was overwhelmed with anger and hurt, and I told him he had let me down in the worst possible way. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he'd messed up, and he'd do anything to make it right. I didn't want him near me or our son at that moment, so I asked him to leave. He tried to protest, but I told him I needed time to process everything. He left, and I spent the rest of my hospital stay alone with my baby, trying to grapple with the enormity of what had happened. Since then, Jake has been trying to make amends. He's been taking parenting classes, attending therapy, and is constantly trying to be present and supportive. But I can't shake the feeling of betrayal. He abandoned me at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Every time I look at him, I remember being alone in that delivery room, terrified and in pain, wondering why the person who promised to be by my side wasn't there. My family is split. Some think I'm being too hard on Jake, that he made a mistake and is clearly remorseful. They say he's a good father and partner otherwise, and I should focus on moving forward for the sake of our child. Others think what he did was unforgivable, and I should leave him. They believe I'll never truly trust him again, and that's no foundation for a marriage. I'm torn. I do still love him, and I know he loves me and our son, but part of me wonders if I'll ever get over this. Was it just a moment of weakness on his part, or a sign of something deeper that I can't overlook? So, AITA for leaving him at the hospital and now considering leaving him for good. What do you think about this one? Lay down the hammer in the comments section, and let's move on to the second case. Case 2. Am I the bad person for telling my wife she is not worthy of what she's asking for her push present? My wife and I have been together for 5 years. She's pregnant with our first right now. A few days ago, she sends me a TikTok video of a woman over one of those extremist podcasts talking about deserving some kind of a push present. At first, I didn't even know what that meant. But when I looked it up, it's basically a thank you gift to the woman who brought your child in the world. This concept is and still seems very strange to me. I understand seeking appreciation from your husband for what women go through during pregnancy and childbirth. But it's the materialistic part that gave me the ick. The woman on the TikTok went on and on about how it's a body for a body, which meant the man would have to get a permanent tattoo on his lower body, give her a house and a car as a gift exclusively to her. I felt that those expectations are very entitled, honestly a little vindictive, envious, permanent tattoo part, and very over the top for my taste. The decision to bring a child in the world is both partners' decision. My wife in our case is not forced to be a mom or be pregnant, as she wants to be a parent too. I simply replied to the TikTok with laughing emojis and moved on, thinking it was the end of it, and probably thought she meant to send that TikTok as a satire like, "Oh, look how dumb this woman is, thinking she deserves all that." She was in the other room when I reacted to the video. So she comes to me and tells me that she doesn't expect a tattoo and a house exclusively for her, but she wants me to dip into my personal savings to get her a car exclusively for her. I looked at her, almost shocked, and began laughing. I thought my wife and I had similar views on how extremist people can be, and I was wrong. I thought she was joking, and I pressed her if she was actually serious. She got very annoyed that I thought she was joking and probably imitating the entitled woman on the reel. She flatly said that she expects a real push present. I said that her gift is the gift of parenthood and the realized outcome of a healthy baby. And materially speaking, I'll probably gift her a Mother's Day card, a day out, or some jewelry she wants, total under $700. But nothing more. I said if she really wants an extra car, it'll be our car, not just hers. She pressed more and said how it isn't enough for what she will go through. She kept pushing and pushing and asked me if I think she's not worthy enough. I told her she is worthy as my partner and the mother of my child, but she has to be realistic and realize that none of us, individually speaking, is worthy of what she's asking for. That she has to manage her expectations, because I don't see why she feels she deserves that. It came out wrong, but I didn't mean to dismiss her as a person. She isn't speaking to me and is crying, arguing about it. I heard her criticizing me to her sister on the phone, but under no circumstances would I ever considering gifting her a car. I feel bad she is hurting right now, but I don't feel bad for giving her a reality check. What about that? Who would you rule for? State down your ruling, and let's move on to our third case. Case 3. Am I the bad person for not inviting my father because he disowned me after knowing that I wasn't his biological child? So let's get into it, I guess. Almost a decade ago, my dad found out that my mom cheated on him with another guy years ago through my mother's sister. Back then, my mom and aunt weren't in good terms, so she told Dad everything. My parents fought over this, and Dad filed for divorce. We all got DNA tested, and out of 3 children, I was the only one who wasn't his. It felt so bad to know that your dad, who raised you for almost 16 years, wasn't really your dad. That didn't feel as bad as him kicking me out of his house when I was begging him not to. I wished I could just kill myself when he disowned me. My mom went into a depressive state and would just spend all day in bed and would just get out to use the toilet. My grandparents lived in a different state, but they did everything they could to make our lives better. I needed to come home from school, do all the chores in the house, and tend to my mom and check on her. I did everything that could possibly be done to make sure we lived. I would ask my mom who my real dad was, but all I got was screaming or a hit. My siblings and grandparents from Dad's side tried to make things right between me and Dad, but he wouldn't budge. Apparently, I was just a reminder that Mom cheated on him and nothing else. I remember my 17th birthday when no one remembered that it was my birthday. I cried to the point where I didn't have any tears left. Even when I graduated from high school, only my grandmother came. Why didn't my feelings matter to anyone? Why was I supposed to endure this? After I returned from my graduation, I told Mom that I was leaving if she doesn't tell me who my real dad is. And this time, she did tell me who he was. I met him. After finding where he lived, I discovered that I have a half-brother and that my real father was a widower and a doctor. He didn't know that I existed or the fact that Mom was married. It took us time, but we built a bond, and he helped to get through college, and he walked me down the aisle. He even got Mom some help, and I am forever grateful to him. Well, present time me, I, 26F, Was married to my lovely fiancée last week, and I didn't invite my ex-dad to my wedding. He tried to contact me before the wedding, but I don't want anything to do with him. My siblings and grandparents from ex-dad's side say I am wrong, and that he wanted to come and make things right, but I don't want to make things right. He had the right to abandon me, so I have a right to do the same. He isn't my father. He was once upon a time, but not now. I understand that he was hurt, but I was hurt too. Everyone tells me to let go of the grudge, but I just don't want him in my life. And no, I won't give him another chance. My husband understands, but no one else seems to understand what I had to go through to get to where I am now. He cannot just come to my life 9.5 fucking years later and expect things to be alright. Am I the bad person? What do you think the fair ruling should be? You hold the power of judgment. State your ruling in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. In life, we may run, but we can never hide from true justice. Stay safe, everyone.